Welcome to the Amanda Hall Psychic Show here on A1R Psychic Radio, broadcast on Moonstruck TV. I hope you're having an absolutely fantastic week wherever you are in this globe of ours. I know that we're still in some very tricky times, and most of us would sort of like to just shed everything and sort of go outside and do the happy dance and say, wow, the world's back to normal. Unfortunately, it's not quite that way just yet. And I always try and be positive and optimistic no matter what's going on in the world around us. I think there's enough negativity and enough pessimism to go around that I don't want to be that sort of person. I want to bring a little bit of sunshine into your life and a little bit of light and a little bit of positivity. So having said that, we're going to kick the show off with the Secrets of Tarot card of the week, which is the Three of Pentacles, which I was really pleased when I drew that before the show, because it is actually quite a positive card. It says improvements underway. Now, isn't that something that we'd all like to feel is happening in our lives now, that we've got some improvements underway? We're well aware, but there could be some delays still around it. It is the card of renowned glory. Now, when I talk about things like renowned glory, to me, it's the highest point that we can get. So I'm going to be very, very optimistic and say we're going to have some fantastic, sensational news this week on the coronavirus. But it's also reminding us that we need to get in touch with our place of worship. Now, I appreciate most people can't go to their places of worship at the moment because of, being in lockdown restrictions around the world. But we can find that place of worship within ourselves, whether that be religious belief systems, or whether it's just believing in ourselves or believing in that we have the answers for ourselves. It's wherever your place of worship is. And I think that's a really important message this week, that we all need to get back in touch with ourselves and look at what we can find as a way of bringing us some peace, some solitude, and some answers. And I think that's the really important message. But let's go on the positive too. Improvements underway. We know that whatever breakthroughs that are made at the moment, there will still be some delays around it, unfortunately. So it's been a busy week astrologically this week, and it will continue to be busy for some months ahead. I mean, it's always busy in the world of astrology. But this week I want to focus on two different areas. Over the last few weeks on the show, we've been focusing on the coronavirus, and today will be no different. But I want to take you to what's actually happening this week, the things that are going to affect us first and foremost this week. Now, we have the full moon in Scorpio, which is going to be happening May 7. So wherever you are in the world, starting on May 7, but we always have to look at a couple of days prior to this. So from May 5, we're starting to feel the effects of the full moon. Now, the reason why this is important to start looking at it 2 days before it actually happens, then 3 days of the full moon, and then 2 days after it, is that we feel the effects of a full moon or any moon cycle coming up for 48 hours prior. Then we've got the intensity of the energy for 2.5 to 3 days, and then we've got the winding down of the energy. Now, the full moon in Scorpio, in my professional opinion, is the most difficult of all the full moons that we experience in a 12-monthly cycle. Now, the reasons for that is the full moon is asking us to delve deep into our emotional selves, and it's asking us to pull up anything that is negative, that is dark, that is troubling us, anything that we need to sort of look at and release. It's asking us to empty our emotional buckets. Now, this can be very, very difficult when it moves into the sign of Scorpio, because the sign of Scorpio is water, but it is frozen water, like a block of ice. So the Scorpio energy doesn't necessarily want to bring things out into the daylight. It would rather keep it hidden. It would rather keep it under that rock ledge. It would rather keep it in a dark place. It doesn't necessarily want to bring things to the light of day. So this is why I'm saying the full moon in Scorpio is usually the most difficult one that we experience as human beings in a 12-month astrological cycle. Because of that reason, we find it far more comfortable to leave those tricky emotional situations or things that we need to look at well and truly hidden. We'll deal with that tomorrow or next week or next month or next year. Today's not the day. It's all too painful. It's all too confronting. I really didn't want to deal with that now. I don't have the energy. I'm feeling tired. I'm feeling not so much depressed, but I'm feeling out of sorts. I'm feeling like that, for people that have emotional illnesses, they find at this particular full moon that their emotional illnesses are more heightened, that they can have sort of psychotic episodes or have darker, deeper emotions than what is normal. So it's a time to sort of really be very mindful of our fellow man, and particularly anybody that is having trouble with their emotions. And at the moment, there's a lot more people struggling with emotions due to this COVID-19 virus than is considered normal, as we've all been sort of in lockdown restrictions, and some of those are starting to lift around the world, and we're starting to sort of make our way through to what could become our new normal for a very, very long time. And we need to adjust to this. And even very well-balanced, organised, positive, dynamic sort of people are struggling with this, because everything in our lives that is considered normal is upside down and doesn't feel right at the moment. So that leads me on to what I really want to talk about this week, connected to the coronavirus. Look, we've spoken many, many times about Pluto being in Capricorn, and Pluto's been there since about 2007. But Pluto is also the planet of, transformation. It's lessons that are slow, deliberate and definite, and lessons that are learnt we don't forget in a hurry with Pluto. And Pluto takes 224 years approximately to go around the zodiac. So when we see something like Pluto going retrograde or backwards, it also means that the lessons of Pluto become more intense. Now, people sort of say, how can it become any more intense than what it's been in these last few months of what we've been collectively dealing with as a globe, with this pandemic as it's unfolding more and more around the world, and there's a lot of loss of life, there's a lot of tragedy, there's a lot of businesses folding and going to the wall. Everybody's very concerned about their finances, their health, what's the future going to look like, what's it going to look like for my children and my grandchildren, will I have enough money in retirement, and on and on and on the questions go. So it's going to be very interesting as Pluto has gone into this retrograde phase. It started on April 25th. It will go through to October 4. It means during this period of time, Pluto's energy is going to seem more intense. We are going to have pockets of where our emotions are going to be really, really tested. Now, for some people, there'll be pockets of time, whether it's a matter of minutes or hours or days or even leading into weeks, where their thinking will become very dark, where it can be almost pessimistic, almost negative, and you sort of can't seem to slap yourself around and pull yourself out of this dark place. And, no matter what anybody says to you, it doesn't make you feel better. I want you to be aware of this. I want you to be very conscientious of it, and I want you to make sure that if you are feeling that way, that you reach out to somebody, have a conversation, get some professional help, try and understand where these feelings are coming from. Is it just due to what's going on in the world? Is it what's going on in your personal world? And it could just be that it's being extremely amplified by the Pluto retrograde. For some people, it will be a really difficult time as they come to terms with the changes or the endings, or like a death that has happened in their life, even though it may not have been a death of person or the loss of a family member. It can be a death in another way, that their income stream has changed. They've lost their job. Things that were considered normal to them and they knew where they were going late last year, all of a sudden their world has been tipped upside down. So death can come in many different forms. Death isn't always physical death of a person. It can be the changes in our lives that we weren't expecting or we weren't prepared for. So I'm not saying the whole of this Pluto retrograde is going to be negative. What I'm trying to do is prepare you for that there may be some rough pockets ahead. It's like being in a plane and the captain says, okay, fasten your seatbelt, we're going to go through a bit of turbulence. We'll be fine, but we might hit a few rocky patches and the plane might sort of hit a few bumps. And, that sort of sends shockwaves through you and you start to think, oh, my goodness, I hope the plane's safe and we land safely. It's one of those sort of journeys. So it's like buckle on your seatbelt. We're in for the ride of our lives. But out of this can also come some great inspiration. I always believe when we get taken to a dark or a not so pleasant place that we have to sort of confront ourselves and look at what's going on in our lives and maybe what we can change and sort of own what we don't particularly like and try and understand why we're experiencing that, that out of that does come a ray of sunshine. Out of that comes a different sort of strength. It comes a strength that we didn't know that we had until we've been faced with this adversity. On another way of looking at the Pluto retrograde is that we have to be very careful that we're not going to be hoodwinked. That over the last few months, have we been told the truth by our political leaders and, medical leaders and everything around the world? We have to make sure that we keep constantly sifting through this barrage of information that is coming out, by the second connected to this coronavirus. We have to look at what works for us, what we believe to be the truth. We can't just look at one source and say, well, that's gospel. That's the absolute only truth there is. I think in these uncertain times, I think we have to look at information coming from a variety of sources and then sort of sit with it and sort of go with what feels right in your gut. If it feels right to you, then it probably is right for you. If it feels uncomfortable, doesn't feel right, then discard it, let it go and move on to the next piece of information. We are going to find a lot of toing and froing and a lot of people laying blame at other people's feet and sort of trying to take the attention off them because they haven't handled something right or done something right or didn't listen early enough or whatever. So there's going to be enough of the blame game to go around. And we're going to find that even from people that are normally in power, that have got their head together, that are normally fairly level-headed and sort of are able to motivate the people, we're going to see different sides of their personalities too that maybe we don't feel comfortable with, and we're going to question, say, hang on a minute, I don't know whether I like that person anymore. I'm not very happy with their behaviour. So it's going to be a mixed bag. So what I'm saying is don't try and sort of say one size fits all. Go with what's being presented to you, analyse it, sit with it, throw out what doesn't feel comfortable with you, but also know that during this time, we may also have some breakthroughs on a medical front, because as the globe unites in the search for a vaccine for this pandemic, we will see people coming forward with some irrational ideas, but we'll also see some major breakthroughs too. So I'm going to err on the side of caution and say, for all this madness that's going on around the world, we will get some major breakthroughs. And I do strongly believe we will get a vaccine. And, we may not be in a position globally to be vaccinating everybody by the end of the year. I think that's probably slightly optimistic. But I do think that we're going to get answers, and maybe on more than one level. Maybe there might be 2 or 3 different solutions to the problem. There may be different information that's yet going to come out that maybe we don't fully understand this virus yet and its complexities. I'm not a doctor. I can only speak on an astrological level, and I've been in astrology and studying astrology for over 40 years. So that's where I get my information from. But from what I'm seeing from a planetary level, I'm seeing that maybe there's more than one strain of this virus and maybe there's more than one solution. So I hope for everybody's sake around the world that you're staying safe, you're looking after each other, and you're following the local guidelines of what you can and can't do. And the most important thing I think that we all need to remember is that we are all in this together. And if you do need to venture out, please put safety first. If not for yourself, think of the other person that you might come in contact with. And if you're advised to wear a mask in your area, then don't just do it for yourself. Do it for everybody else that you may come in contact with. If we all look out for each other, then we're taking care of ourselves and our own local environment and our own families. But more importantly, we're taking care of each other. And I think that's the major message here that we need to be looking at. So quickly, we're going to be working with the sun candle this week. And I wanted to bring a little bit of sunshine, a little bit of light into everybody's lives. So that's the reason why I'm featuring that one. So we're going to take our first call. We're going to talk to Crystal in Fayetteville in Tennessee. Are you there, Crystal? I apologise if I've got the name of your location wrong, Crystal. Are you there?
It's okay.
Crystal?
Yeah, it's okay.
Do you have a question I can work with, please, sweetie?
Hello.
You have a question for me, Crystal?
Yeah, I really, let me see. I guess I would like to know how my life will play out for the rest of the year with finances, love,
Okay, Crystal.
work.
All right, we can look at that for you. We can look at how your life's going to play out for the rest of this year. There's a number of endings and changes and transformations that they're bringing up with me at the moment for you, Crystal, and I don't mean just because we're in this pandemic. I think even if we weren't in this pandemic, I think you would have still been experiencing a number of endings, changes and transformations in your life. They're taking me back to last year where I felt that you slowly started to sift through people in your life. It was like I'm putting people into two columns, the keepers and the ones I'm letting go of. And it was like you were being sort of, in some people's eyes, quite ruthless, but I don't call it ruthless. I think you were being very open and very honest with yourself at the people that you needed to surround yourself in your life with moving forward. And it was like there was too many people there that were using you and taking advantage of your good nature, Crystal, that never gave you anything in return. And finally, you started to say to yourself, as much as I might like you, you're no use to me. You're not bringing anything to the table. You're not bringing anything to this friendship, this relationship, this connection. So I'm going to put you over here in the pile that says that we no longer have anything left in common. We don't really have a connection. It's all one-sided from your point of view. That was the start of the changes, Crystal, that I was seeing in you sort of emerging as a completely different person, much stronger in yourself, much more forthright about what it is that you want. Then hit the pandemic and it was sort of like, wow, what do I do now? It was sort of like everything that I was planning on doing has been put on hold. Well, yes, it has temporarily. I mean, but I feel out of this also too, it's enabling you the chance to sort of double check that everything that you wanted to bring about and change in your life is exactly what you want it to be. So I feel from about August, Crystal, doors are going to start to open. You're going to start to feel much more fulfilled. But I also sort of felt that there was going to be a change in income or how money is structured in your life. And it seems to be less complicated and seems to be a lot simpler than what it was. And you're starting to understand what money really means. It's not just about paying bills and living a life. You're sort of looking at it through a different lens, I suppose, that it's a means to an end. It's not necessarily something that controls you or dominates your life as it did in the past. So I feel from here moving forward, I think you've got a very full life ahead of you. I am seeing changes in money, as I said, around August. I'm also seeing potentially either the changes to where you're living or a potential move. But that's sort of more later in the year or the early part of next year. They didn't clearly show me that you were moving. They just showed me that there were still changes around you. Still things aren't set in concrete. There's still going to be a few twists and turns, I think, before we get you on the right track. But health-wise, they were showing me whatever you've done or whatever you've changed in the last 6 months, I want you to continue because it really is making a difference. So that's where we're going to leave Crystal, and we're going to move on to Jamie in Russell, Kentucky, USA. Are you there, Jamie?
Yes.
You have a question I can work with, sweetie?
Hello.
You have a question for me, please, Jamie? Hello, Jamie. Looks like we've lost Jamie. Oh, that's unfortunate. No, Jamie doesn't seem to be there. All right, well, look, I'll tune into Jamie's energy anyway, even though that we've lost her and we didn't get a question from Jamie. What they were showing me around Jamie was the fact that things were starting to blossom. There's new opportunities coming towards Jamie. I think she's actually had some really great breakthroughs in this period of this coronavirus where she's had to sort of confront herself and look at where she wanted her life to go. And they're showing me her like a rose. It's sort of like it's in bud. It's ready to start, opening up. It's not ready to bloom yet, but it's just sort of the early stages of the I'll continue on with Jamie's reading. She's ready now to just sort of open up and bloom as if, you know, she's a rose unfolding, which is a good thing. I don't feel uncomfortable with that. Oh, you're here now, Jamie. Do you have a question for me, sweetie?
I cannot hear her.
You have a question for me, darling?
Yes, my question would be on like on my relationship.
Right, okay. All right, okay, we can move on to your relationship. You know, what they were showing me was like you were like a rose that you were unfolding and sort of starting to blossom and bloom, which is a good thing. Now, the relationship that I feel that you're in at the moment, I feel it's gone through what I term as a difficult patch recently, and it's sort of been like you're really starting to understand who each other is. I'm not necessarily saying that's been a pleasant time. There's been some major breakthroughs there, and there's been some things there that you haven't felt comfortable with, and I'm going to say the same for the other person at what they've discovered about you. So it's been a very enlightening time, but not necessarily has it been easy on the emotions. I feel from the end of this month, it's like we're going to start to get some major breakthroughs with this. So I still think we've got a couple of weeks there are some tricky things to sort of maneuver our way around and to be open and honest with each other about how you're feeling and what you like and what you don't like. It's interesting because I don't see the relationship ending, but what I do see is an end to the way things were. It's like the things that were causing things to be uncomfortable or tricky, it's like we've finally broken through the barriers of that. We're breaking those barriers down. We're moving forward. We're getting a completely different understanding of each other and a different acceptance. Now, we all know we can't change another person, and I don't believe people change, but what I do believe is people can modify or simplify or enhance their behaviour or make conscious choices to improve it, or, you know, if it's something negative or destructive, they get help and they learn to work through the emotions and the triggers for those sort of things. So then they seemingly become a different person. So we all have those capabilities. And I feel what you two have done for each other is push those buttons to extreme levels where you've brought out the worst in each other, but you've also brought out the best in each other. So somewhere now we've got to find some middle ground, which is what I feel is going to happen. So that takes me back to the beginning of the reading where I saw you like a rose. You're in bud, and the bud is just slowly starting to open up. It hasn't got to full bloom yet. So if we look at the relationship like that, is it's gone back into bud form, so it's gone back into a new stage of like being at a beginning. We're slowly starting to open up those layers, and eventually this relationship will go into full bloom. I do feel that this relationship has karmic connotations to it, and by that, when we have a lot of karma attached to a relationship, doesn't always necessarily make it easy. It means it's prickly, it's uncomfortable, it challenges us, it makes us, you know, be on an amazing high at different times, and then other times in very much in a low point, and everything in between. But if we're able to work through that and break through those barriers and understand it and work together as a team, quite often the result is of a karmic relationship is the most amazing, beautiful relationship that we could possibly begin to imagine that we could have, because we've worked through those karmic lessons that we've brought in from the past. And this is what I feel you're doing, Jamie. So again, I want to say to you, well done. I think you're doing an amazing job. Just keep going. And just, you know, let your gut guide you. If something feels uncomfortable, then try and talk about it with your partner. Even if it does end up in some crosswords and the two of you sort of really in an uncomfortable place, at least we're breaking down those barriers that then we can start to find solutions. I do feel that this relationship will go from strength to strength, and I do feel that we will find some amazing happiness there. And I also feel towards the end of the year, the two of you will be moving home. So that's where we're going to leave, Jamie. I hope that's been of help. Now, it's very, very interesting in these very uncomfortable times with the coronavirus. I know many of us have had, you know, confronting things to deal with family members and friends and being in lockdown and whatever. And it's really important, I think, that we get a routine and we stick to it. We change our routines up to suit what's happening this week in our lives and be flexible enough that next week it may be different. If we do that, I think we will come out of this virus situation much stronger, much better people. And it's interesting as we start to see the world open up and start to reopen and go back to day-to-day life, how different our lives are going to be. I don't think we're ever going to go back to what we considered normal a few months ago. I think there's going to be a lot of new normals, and hopefully the world is starting to heal in some way. I know for us here in Australia, we don't have a huge pollution problem like other areas of the world, but it's just interesting to see the planet starting to heal around us here. So I hope wherever you are that you don't lose the lessons that have been gained in the planet rebalancing itself through this terrible pandemic. But the most important thing I want you to do is be kind to yourself, be kind to each other. Make sure that you do something every single day that puts a smile on your face, and don't forget to check in with people that, you know, may be feeling a little bit down. Send them a little smiley face, send them a message, send them something on social media to brighten their day. We are all in this together, and we will all come out the other side together. So I hope wherever you are in this world of ours, let's join hands, and let's all beat this together. Until next week, bye for now.